Before we begin, viewer discretion is strongly advised. What follows is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is the verbatim federal courtroom testimony, as reported by Inner City Press, of the Sean Diddy Combs trial. The courtroom was thick with tension, an oppressive stillness that seemed to press on everyone present. Diddy sat at the defense table, eyes locked on the polished wooden floor. His usual swagger was gone, replaced with the distant stare of a man trying to contain something crumbling inside. From the very beginning, the trial had been a media firestorm, one of the most publicly dissected legal proceedings in recent memory. But nothing could prepare the courtroom for what happened on day 5. It began like any other day. Tight security, murmurs of anticipation, a packed gallery. The expectation was that Cassie would return to the stand for follow-up testimony, a continuation of the emotional unraveling that had begun the day before. But then, the courtroom doors creaked open. Not the side entrance typically reserved for lawyers or witnesses. The main doors. They opened wide, with a kind of finality, and in stepped 50 Cent. Dressed sharply in a tailored gray suit, his eyes hidden behind dark glasses, he moved with calculated intent. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The silence swallowed everything. Reporters froze mid-sentence. Pens hovered above notepads. Cassie's attorney paused and turned. Diddy? Froze. For a split second, it felt like time itself stopped. Even the judge looked up from her bench, acknowledging 50 with a subtle nod. Not as a celebrity, but as a presence, as something larger. Cameras flashed from the hallway. The whispers began to build in waves through the gallery. No one had expected him to actually show. Sure, he'd posted on social media, dropped veiled threats, shared cryptic clips. But this was something different. This was a declaration. He took a seat in the back, folded his arms, and locked eyes with Diddy. No movement, no emotion, just presence. And that was enough to send a ripple through the room. Diddy's lawyers leaned in quickly, whispering frantic instructions, but he wasn't listening. His stare was fixed. The man he'd sparred with for years in the media, in interviews, in subliminal lyrics. That man was now just a few yards away, in the flesh. And he wasn't trolling anymore. He was witnessing. When the court broke for lunch, reporters and cameras swarmed the courthouse steps. And that's when 50 spoke. Calm, clear, unshaken. I'm here because I've watched this industry protect the wrong people for too long, he said. Cassie's brave. She's standing up when it's dangerous to. She's not alone anymore. Not while I'm here. His voice carried weight, not volume. Weight. He laid out what he had seen over the years, the behaviors he'd noticed at parties, the whispers he'd heard in green rooms, the stories others had dismissed. People laughed it off, he said, but I didn't. I saw it for what it was. He revealed that he had quietly been working with Cassie's legal team, passing along what he had. Old photos, call logs, even a sworn statement from a former bodyguard who claimed to have seen disturbing things at private events. And then came the bombshell. 50 Cent was funding an independent investigation, not for clicks, not for clout. Because too many people have been hurt, and too many are still scared. Cassie's team released a short statement thanking him for standing up, for having the courage to do what most wouldn't. Meanwhile, Diddy's lawyers scrambled. They called the appearance a media stunt, tried to dismiss its relevance, but the panic in their voices betrayed them. Something had changed. Something irreversible. Back in the courtroom, Diddy sat motionless. His fingers twitched on the table. He avoided looking back. Cassie re-entered with a different energy. Taller, steadier. as if something in her had shifted. The courtroom noticed it. Her voice, always calm, now had resolve. She looked jurors in the eyes when she spoke. She didn't waver. Her testimony became sharper, more detailed. She described not just isolated incidents, but a system. She called it control architecture, a lifestyle designed to isolate her, manipulate her, contain her. Her travel was monitored, her conversations observed, her freedom narrowed. He said I was his property, she told the jury, that I embarrassed him in front of the industry. Objections were overruled. The judge allowed it all in. Then, the entire room fell silent. Her attorneys asked permission to play an audio file. One, Cassie said, had been buried in an old iPad she'd recently recovered. The judge allowed it. Through the court's sound system, Diddy's voice echoed, "Don't test me, Cass. You know what happens when you push me." Gasps were audible. The jury stiffened. One juror blinked repeatedly, as if trying to process what they were hearing. Diddy turned pale. He stared at the speaker like it had betrayed him. His team objected. Too late. The audio was out. The damage was done. And still, 50 Cent sat in the back. Arms folded. Not a word. Then Cassie said what many had been thinking. "I know some of you in here have seen what he's done. I hope you say something too." The words weren't just aimed at the jury. They were aimed at the gallery, at the industry, and maybe even at the man watching from the back row. When the judge called for recess, Diddy's lawyers circled him like a shield. They whispered, passed notes, made calls. That night, insiders leaked details of a frantic emergency meeting, a 4 a.m. strategy session where the defense considered pivoting. No longer claiming full innocence, but maybe, instead, framing Diddy as a product of trauma, of the environment, a deeply flawed man, not a monster. But it was too late. The cracks were there. And now, the entire courtroom could see them. The prosecution moved fast. They brought in new witnesses. A tour manager who said he'd once seen Diddy punch a wall after yelling at Cassie behind a closed door. An ex-assistant who quit after being told to track her every movement. The judge allowed their testimony, evidence of a pattern. The jury was locked in. Juror 7, who hadn't taken a single note all trial, now scribbled furiously. Juror 11 leaned forward, eyes fixed. Then came the moment no one expected. As Cassie described an incident from 2018, a private room at Diddy's Miami estate being held for over a day, Diddy lost it. "That's not what happened," he roared, slamming his hand down on the table. The sound snapped through the courtroom like a thunderclap. Everyone froze. The judge raised her gavel. "Mr. Combs, this is your only warning. One more outburst, and you will be removed." But Diddy couldn't help himself. His eyes locked onto 50 Cent. "You've been waiting for this, haven't you?" he shouted. "You'll regret it." Security moved fast. 2 guards flanked him instantly. Another stepped between the gallery and the table. But 50 Cent didn't react. He didn't blink. He simply leaned back further, crossed one leg, and stared. Cassie never flinched. She resumed her testimony as if nothing had happened. And the judge didn't call a recess. She let the silence settle like a weight on the room. "Control yourself," she said to Diddy, "or I will." That sentence, in that moment, hit harder than anything else. Because for a man who had built an empire on always being in control of people, of perception, of power, it was the one thing he no longer had. By the end of the day, the illusion had shattered. This wasn't the mogul from TV interviews or red carpets. This was a man unraveling, and the world was watching it in real time. And 50 Cent? He never said another word. He didn't need to, because by then everyone understood. Nothing would ever be the same again.